Today we are here with Hannah Rakoska, registered holistic nutritionist, certified holistic cancer practitioner, and founder of Back to Balance Nutrition. I met Hannah because she's a very special and unique human being, kind and the best. But one of our coworkers' husband was diagnosed with cancer, and we were trying to figure out the best treatment that will support his diagnosis. He was diagnosed with stage 3 stomach cancer, and they had no idea of what to do, how to do it, just that he needed chemo. So we started looking, and it was a miracle. We found her. She's all the way in Canada, but out of all my research is the best of the best, with having evidence-based knowledge and being certified with bringing the latest research, like she said, the messenger of what is the best type of ways to supplement the diagnosis that you might be dealing with. I'm very happy to say he's free of cancer. He had his surgery, chemos, and he's doing really good. He's back at work full time. He still follows all the recommendations. There were life routine changes that don't happen just because of the diagnosis, but hopefully to be able to continue living a healthy physical, mental, and emotional life. So welcome, Hannah.
Thank you so much
for being here.
Liam. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction too. I'm so happy that I met you. I'm so happy that I got to work with your coworker and her husband and their family. It was a blessing. So thank you for having me, and thank you for having me today again. I'm super happy to be here.
I'm very excited. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and particularly your journey into working with cancer patients.
Yeah, so long story short, I came into working with cancer patients and cancer nutrition via my own experience with cancer. So I was diagnosed with lymphoma at the age of 20. It's been 18 years since I was diagnosed with lymphoma, and that lifestyle or that life circumstance pivoted my entire career from one in dental hygiene to one in nutrition. So I went back to school, became very, very passionate about nutrition and how to support the body during cancer through nutritional therapy, is what I call it. And so I studied to become a registered holistic nutritionist. And I studied to become a certified holistic cancer practitioner so that I was actually credible in terms of giving the same advice that I use myself through my own research during my healing journey for other people. And I also have a degree in health science. So I'm very, very passionate about being evidence-based and being able to guide people who are in the dark when they're diagnosed with cancer, because most people are, in terms of how to eat, what to do, what other lifestyle, habits can support treatment alongside medical treatment. Like you said, Lilium, your friend had chemotherapy, surgery, radiation, etc. That's a part of the equation for healing from cancer, but it's just a part. We also need, different interventions such as dietary, lifestyle, and other holistic modalities. And so that's what I do today. I work with people, guiding them through those different interventions.
Great. And that's my next question, complementing the conventional cancer treatment approach, because one of the things that we found through the journey is that there's really not much more that is recommended, even when they ask, is there a specific diet or something else that he can be doing? It was, nope, just eat whatever he can, because I guess there is the conception of they lose their appetite. So whatever they eat is going to be okay. So tell us a little bit about the unique challenges that cancer patients face when it comes to nutrition and overall well-being during their treatment and the recovery phase.
Yeah, so the great point, Liam, regarding when you're going through cancer treatment, and like oncologists will typically tell you to eat whatever you want, because that's just the fact is that 1 in 5 cancer patients passes away from malnutrition. And so from an oncologist point of view, just getting your calories in is actually the most important part during treatment in terms of nutrition and dietary interventions. And a part of that is, of course, that's solid. Like I don't blame them for that at all. Get your calories in. We don't want you to, pass away from being malnourished, when we know that 80 to 90% of cancer patients experiences malnourishment at some point during treatment. But on the other side of the equation, we have to also look at the fact that, okay, quality versus quantity. We want quantity for calories and meeting those daily recommendations, but we also, and protein as well, and hydration. But we also want to make sure that in that same sphere, we're including cancer fighting foods. We're including foods that actually are rich in certain, cancer fighting phytochemicals, other nutrients, like minerals, vitamins, that actually support the daily functioning and support the cellular, repair, support immune function, etc. in the body, rather than only focusing on calorie intake. We want to focus on optimizing functioning on a cellular level as well. And so what I do is I help people navigate dietary interventions in terms of, okay, let's make sure you're meeting your daily calorie intake. Let's make sure you're getting your 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram body weight, which is what's recommended during cancer treatment. Let's make sure that you're getting, your exact water intake. But let's also include foods that are actually therapeutic for fighting cancer, and helping to repair your cellular DNA, and helping to repair your immune function, and support your actual body during treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because we talked a little bit about fasting, and you educate us about like before cancer treatment and how there's so much information, but having the right guidance, it can walk you through, because it's sometimes complete opposite of getting all of your calorie intakes in when you're fasting a little bit before treatment. So I think they can find out. You have really good posts on that on your Instagram.
Yeah.
But no, looking at the interdisciplinary approach, because you mentioned the nutritional part and then directly the oncologist, how will you see clients benefiting from doing that, working with all of the different disciplines?
Right. So when we look at cancer, we should be looking at, when we're looking at treating cancer in the conventional sense, when we go to see an oncologist, they treat cancer with chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, immunotherapy. And that's one aspect of healing cancer. That's removing the tumor bulk, reducing the tumor bulk, shrinking the cancer cells. Obviously, that's very, very important. That's like the number one thing that we have to focus on, is really debulking the tumor. But we also have to focus on the imbalances in the body that were present before we had this manifestation of cancer, because cancer is a symptom of an underlying disease process in the body, just like any other chronic illness. And so to heal completely from it, we have to, of course, do the medical treatments, but we also have to support any other underlying imbalances, like maybe inflammation was a part of the disease process in a certain person, oxidation, poor immune function, poor gut health, poor blood circulation, poor blood glucose control, unhealthy gut bacterial imbalance. Like these are all things that are actually, we find are underlying in cancer patients, that then, lead to, or can lead to the state of disease. And so we have to support those pillars, those factors, through not only medical treatment, but also through nutrition, also through other like holistic healing modalities that support the mind and the spiritual aspect of a person, because we are mind, body, and spirit. And when we look at conventional cancer treatment, we're only focusing on the body part. We're only focusing on the physical manifestation of cancer. We want to focus on, the mental health aspect, the spiritual aspect, and those three together will then help to support your healing. And so we can't just use one modality when cancer is so complex and it's just such a complicated process. We have to use as much as we can in terms of different modalities to support optimal healing. Does that make sense?
I love it. Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Makes so much sense. Can you give us a practical tips for individuals or their caregivers on how to incorporate the holistic nutrition on their daily routines for their cancer treatment and recovery phase?
Tips on how to incorporate holistic nutrition, like dietary interventions. I would say, I always tell my clients,
Like,
if you
what
want
is your number 3 recommendations?
to,
Because I know it variates depending on the cancer, the type, the stage,
yeah.
but like things that you're like, okay, these 3 things are really important, even if you don't do the rest.
Right. Okay, great. So, because it does get complicated. Some people have, digestive issues and they can't swallow properly, or they're having, other side effects of treatment that impede these things. But if we're going to focus on 3, I would say number 1, do a very, very hyper nourishing green smoothie every single day. So I do a smoothie that actually includes 10 to 12 cups of leafy greens, which are our most nutrient dense foods on the planet. And it includes 90 ounces of filtered water and a quarter of a cup of anti-inflammatory chia seeds or flax seeds, and then some fruit just for the taste to be able to get it down. So I would say that that's my number 1 recommendation. If you do nothing else, do that, because that's going to take you through drinking about 2 liters of a super powerful cancer fighting hyper nourishing drink for breakfast and through lunch. And that'll include your anti-inflammatory factors, cancer fighting factors, etc. Number 2, I would say track your protein intake through the day. So protein, cancer patients require more than someone who doesn't have cancer. So they require about 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram body weight. That's actually critical to helping to get through treatment, to helping people actually recover from cancer, get through chemotherapy without treatment delays, without hospital stays, with optimal immune function during a time where their immune system is bombarded from chemotherapy and radiation. So I would say track your protein intake, use an app like chronometer.com or MyFitnessPal, and then make sure that you're getting enough protein in. So, nuts, seeds, beans, lentils, tofu. Like, I always focus on plant sources because they're the healthiest. Focusing on whole grains, sometimes fish, poultry, etc. Of course, is some people will still want to do that, but we really, really want to focus on protein-rich foods throughout the day. So like in a snack, in a dinner, always have a protein-rich food. And number 3, I would say make sure that you are eating enough calories so that we prevent malnutrition. So again, calorie dense foods, dried fruits, nuts, seeds, nut butters, avocado, whole grains with different sort of healthy fat spreads like guacamole, hummus, tahini sauce, etc.
Perfect.
Those
Thank
are the
you.
top 3. Yeah.
In your experience, and I know we talked about being a holistic body, emotional, and spiritual, how does addressing both the physical and the mental aspects of your health through nutrition better the treatment outcomes and improve the quality of life in cancer patients?
How does the physical benefit of nutrition address? Can you repeat the question?
Improve the outcomes.
Right. So how does nutritional therapy improve? Yeah, great question. Nutrition works on not only helping to suppress the cancer cell growth, but it also helps to optimize like the healthy cells that are not impacted by cancer, protect them from the treatments and from cancer as well. But it also impacts our mental health and our spiritual health, because when we look at nutrition, we have to look at every single cell in our body. We have 30 trillion human cells, and we have to fuel them all properly. And so it affects, of course, our how we're functioning daily, but also our mental health, which leads to our emotional health, supporting brain function, supporting the proper neurotransmitters that are created in our by our gut bacteria that are created in our brain, and then helping someone get through cancer who's dealing with anger, fear, sadness, depression, anxiety. There's so many factors involved in cancer that are in addition to the actual disease, such as these mental disturbances. And so nutrition will actually help to impact all of these factors in the body. So yeah, it's very it's not I mean, it is complex, but it's very also just, it can be very, we can go down different pathways, like how to support gut brain health, how to support mental health, specifically how to support, cancer fighting processes. But in a broad statement, nutrition impacts every single thing when it comes to cancer and healing from it.
Mm-hmm. And also, if what I found really interesting with working with you is that it was not just a nutritional part, but you also add that support with your spiritual and your mental health, with things that I know it was like meditation, exercise, breathing, guided meditations for them. What was the reason you initially or you implement that within your practice when working with a patient?
Lillian, this is probably the most important question you've asked, honestly, because people miss this so much, like when they're healing from something. When we're healing from something, we want the nervous system to be in a state of parasympathetic, and to be in the parasympathetic state, which is the rest or digest phase of the nervous system. When we feel calm, we feel grounded, we feel happy, we're not, in this like state of stress, we're not, in danger. So when we're in the parasympathetic state, that is when the healing mechanisms in our body can actually start to take place. So when we're in that calm state, that's when healing can happen. When we're in a state of, fight or flight, which is the sympathetic state, we are in a state, your body thinks it's in danger. So it's not focusing on healing, it's focusing on getting you out of danger, whether that's, a tiger in front of you or just your own anxiety. And so you can't focus on healing from something when your body's trying to get you out of there. So I always focus on, okay, let's get you into the most calm, most healing state possible. And yeah, nutrition helps with that, with mineral rich foods and foods that are rich in certain, proteins that make certain neurotransmitters. Nutrition helps with that for sure. But the things that help the most with that are actually, like you said, meditation, yoga, prayer, breath work is so powerful. Being in nature, forest bathing, getting getting natural killer cell production elevated through literally walking through the forest, through just inhaling certain compounds from the trees. These are all things that are largely missed when people are healing from something, but I think they're actually probably the most important to get the nervous system into this state of healing.
Thank you for explaining it that way. It really kind of like makes sense. It's like for someone that's not in the medical field or like involved in all of that, sometimes it's hard to understand why it's important to be calmed. So your body is not there, it's reacting and it's doing, so many things when it's under attack, that understanding that you need to be calm in order for yourselves to heal.
Exactly.
It's like the best explanation I've ever heard.
Oh, thank you. That's great. It's because I'm so passionate about it.
Thank you. Moving a little bit more into the mental health, can you explain the connection? I think you've done that, but just to make sure that I don't miss anything, the connection between nutrition and mental health, and how what we eat impact our mood, emotions, and just overall mental well-being.
Yeah, so again, this can be like a 2-hour conversation, but the gist of it is that what we eat and don't eat impacts our mental health. So the number one thing is to look at the brain itself and the nerve cells in the brain. The communication between the nerve cells occurs through neurotransmitters. They're little chemical messengers. And these little neurotransmitters, we know them as dopamine, serotonin. Like, this is what they're called. We hear it in the media often, and they're so important. And they're actually created by our gut bacteria. Mainly 90 to 95% of the happy hormones are created by our gut bacteria, but they're also created in the brain. And when we look at when they're in the brain, there's an enzyme called MAO, monoamine oxidase, and this enzyme degrades these neurotransmitters. So when we look at antidepressants work by inhibiting this specific enzyme. And we know that people who have states of mental health that are not favorable, like depression or anxiety or anger, they have elevated levels of this enzyme. So it's munching away these happy neurotransmitters. And so when we look at diet and nutrition, we know that certain foods actually can inhibit this enzyme and prevent it from degrading these very important neurotransmitters from being decreased in the brain. And foods that can do this are really simple foods: apples, cinnamon, grapes, onions, green tea, other spices like cloves and oregano. And these foods actually have been shown in studies to inhibit this same enzyme that antidepressants inhibit. So I would say that number one, we want to focus on a diet that's rich in foods that not only inhibit this enzyme, but just plant foods in general, because studies have shown that people who eat more vegetables and fruits have lower levels of depression. And studies actually show that plant-based diets that are, centered around whole grains, vegetables, fruits, legumes, nuts, and seeds may lead to a reduced risk of depression of up to 62%. So just
Wow.
eating a plant-rich diet will set you up for a greater risk reduction of mental health disorders than eating a diet that's not rich in plant foods. The other the other aspect of that is looking at foods that actually increase inflammation in the brain, like arachidonic acid rich foods that are found in animal foods. Arachidonic acid is a fat only found in animal foods like eggs, dairy, meats, including fish and poultry. And we have seen in studies that people who eat more meat, for example, and more animal foods in general, do have higher levels of arachidonic acid and do experience mental health imbalances more often than people who don't.
Okay, and I think it was interesting. You said also not the things that you eat and not eat. Where does
Exactly.
sugar play a part of in that?
Yeah, so sugar is one of those sugar imbalances are well, refined sugar intake like candy,
Right. Yes.
soda, etc. Not like sweet potatoes or apples, but refined sugar intake imbalances our blood glucose. So it causes spikes in our blood sugar and spikes in our insulin. And those spikes lead to, like you feel really, really good, and all of a sudden you just crash because your blood sugar just goes way too like super, super high, and then it just crashes because we release so much insulin to try to get it out of the bloodstream. And so when we have that crash, we have that hypoglycemic state, we tend, that actually causes a mood like a depressed state, because you feel low, you feel like you're no longer full of this energy. And these fluctuations in blood sugar can lead to, mood imbalances, mood instability, anxiety, depression, etc. So we want to avoid them. The other aspects, though, of nutrition and mental health, I mean, there's so many, but we also want to look at specific nutrients like that have been linked to depression, have been linked to anxiety, have been linked to mental health disorders. Like B vitamins are really important. The most important is folate. We know that people who eat more folate rich foods that are found in greens and beans have lower rates of depression and other mental health disorders. We know that vitamin C is very important because it's an antioxidant. So again, it just lowers the brain inflammation. We know that vitamin D is linked to mental health. We know, people who have higher levels of vitamin D have lower rates of depression and anxiety. Omega-3 fats help to regulate brain function. So looking at foods that are rich in omega-3s is really, really important, like walnuts and flax seeds and chia seeds. Looking at antioxidants, we know that oxidative stress caused by free radicals, which actually is free radicals are also caused by a diet that's rich in refined sugar. So we know that free radicals cause brain cell death and just aging and cell death in general in the whole body. So how do we combat that? We combat that through antioxidants that are found in, of course, plant-rich foods. And we have, studies show that people who have higher levels of antioxidants in the bloodstream do have improvements in mental health stability. So again, just like focusing on foods that are rich in carotenoids and other, phytonutrients like foods that are leafy greens, berries, onions, garlic, sweet potatoes, you know, the list goes on and on. Green tea, etc., are super, super important.
Wow, it's like a whole new world.
It's a huge topic.
I've
It's a
heard
huge
this.
topic.
Yeah, I've heard about the concept of the gut-brain connection, and
Mhm.
sometimes the gut is being often referred as the second brain. What does that mean? Like in simple terms, like you've done before.
Yeah. And again, this is another, like, this is a huge area of research. It's so
Sorry.
fascinating. I love gut brain. So we know that we have, okay, so our brain is, you know, our brain is our a part of our nervous system. But the gut is actually, it's called the enteric nervous system because the gut actually has nerve cells as well, comparable to the brain, like in terms of the amount of them. And we know that our gut cells, or the nerve cells located in our gut signal our brain, and our brain signals our gut. So, you know, when we have like a very, you know, a gut reaction to something, most people have, I mean, not most people, I think all of us experience the initial feeling in our gut, and then the brain gets the signal after. So our gut is actually like, it's called the second brain, because of just the vast amount of nerve cells that are located there, and the fact that there's such a connection between the brain and the gut. The two are always, they're in constant communication all the time.
Wow.
So one
And
the other.
yes, and then it goes to the next question of, and the question is, how do the foods we consume affect the microbial balance in our gut?
Mhm.
Understanding what you just said, and how
Mhm.
does this balance influence our mental health? But what is a microbial balance?
Right. So,
Just-
so the microbiome is all the bacteria, all the viruses that live on us and inside us. So on your skin, you know, on your eyelashes and your hair, on your everywhere, inside your body. The gut microbiome is the term that's used to describe all the microbes and other, you know, pathogens, etc., viruses that live inside our gut, because there are various, there's healthy ones, the good guys, and then there are more unhealthy um, players in the gut. So when we look at microbiome balance in the gut, what we want to strive for is that our healthy bacteria, the healthy microbes, are in an adequate ratio to the unhealthy, because there's always going to be both, but we want to make sure that we have more of the good guys, less of the bad guys, so that the good guys override the bad guys. But we're always going to have some bad guys, like E. coli, you know, for example, salmonella. It's always actually in our gut in small amounts, and that's totally safe. But as long as we have the right balance. So when we look at the good bacteria, I always tell my clients this. I say, okay, so how do we ensure that we nourish them? How do we make sure that we keep them stable and in balance? We do that through feeding them. And what do they feed on? They only feed on fiber. They only eat dietary fiber. And where is dietary fiber found? It's only found in plant foods. So whole grains, legumes like beans and lentils, vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds. The healthy gut bacteria do not eat refined sugar. They don't eat animal foods like meat, dairy, and eggs. They don't feed on those things. Those things don't benefit them. Those foods actually feed the unhealthy, unfavorable, pathogenic bacteria. So when we want to make sure that we're in balance, we want to make sure that we have an adequate dietary fiber intake, which is about 40 to 50 grams a day, and having about 30 different plant foods a week to keep the diversity of the gut bacteria in check. So the more diverse our diet is in plant foods, the better our gut bacterial balance is actually going to be. And so, and also with the mental health aspect, our good gut bacteria produce 90 to 95% of our serotonin, the happiness hormone, and dopamine, the motivation hormone. So they're producing these little neurotransmitters that regulate our mood. So we think that it's in the brain, and some of them are made in the brain, but the majority are actually made in the gut.
Wow.
So that's the connection. And yeah, long story long.
And how it affects directly mental health. And I think the way that you're explaining it makes a lot of sense, because our coworker's husband had such a hard time sometimes. Even he switched a lot of his habits and his um intake. But then what I loved with working with you is that it's not like all or nothing. So it's not like, oh, you have to be plant-based 100% and you cannot completely stop X, Y, and Z, but finding the right balance. And how can I continue to feed my good bacteria, understanding that there's things that he had a hard time not living, right? So
Right.
I think the way you explain it makes a lot of sense of like, okay, so sometimes you cannot, or you decide not to leave this specific food because of is what you love, right?
Right.
So it's
Right.
never a feeling of guilt or shame or whatnot because you are still eating that, but you're like, that's okay. Let's just focus on what we can do. Let's just focus on how we can continue feeding that good bacteria as well,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. You nailed it, Lilium. It's like I always say, aim for 85% plant-based and then 15%, whatever you want to do. But as long as you're getting that 85% plant-based is kind of like the key. And making sure that I always say, like, people don't in the States and in Canada as well, um only like 5% of the population is getting enough fiber in their daily diet. So fiber is what's feeding our gut bacteria. We really have to start focusing on that. If you're going to have some meat in your diet, maybe some sugar, that's fine. But if you're getting 50 grams of fiber, that's where I really want you to focus on, or what I want you to focus on, I should say. Yeah.
Okay, and I think you did a great example of the different nutritional ingredients or food that they can have in order to have a healthy gut
Mhm.
and consequently contribute to better mental health. Do you want to add anything as far as any choices for cancer fighting foods? But I think you did with the smoothie. It was
Yeah,
very
I
clear.
think no, that's actually a good question. Cancer. So there are actually some specific cancer fighting foods that are all they're all plants, right? They're all plants, of course. And they're also because they're plants, they're also high in fiber. Because all plants have fiber, and therefore they're going to support your gut health. Which, by the way, we didn't touch on this, and this is actually really important. 70% of your immune system cells are actually found in the gut. 70% of your immune system is in the gut. So when we're looking at cancer, developing it in the first place, preventing it, optimizing recovery, we have to look at, again, gut health, because that's where the immune system function is mainly found. So again, we have to feed those gut bacteria because they're communicating with our immune system. And so cancer fighting foods specifically that have been proven to kill cancer cells, there's a lot of them, of course, a lot of them that have never been discovered still, because we can't test every single food on the planet. But the main ones are number one, garlic and onion family. So, including shallots, including red onion, white onion, yellow onion, garlic. As I said, the other family is the cruciferous or cabbage family. So broccoli, cauliflower, bok choy, collard greens, kale, arugula, Brussels sprouts. Those are the two main families of cancer fighting foods. And then we go into other foods like turmeric and green tea and berries, and even like dark chocolate is a cancer fighting food. Tomatoes and grapes with resveratrol. So all of these different foods have been found to kill cancer stem cells or cancer cells because of certain specific phytochemicals that they contain. And if anybody wants a list of the scientifically proven cancer fighting foods, they can go to my website and just download it for free. Backtobalancenutrition.com. You just fill out the form and you get the PDF of that, and you can see how many servings a day you require. Another really good one, like for us, Lilium, we're women, the most common cancer for us is breast cancer. It's a breast cancer, 80% of them are hormone driven. We need to, focus on preventing that. Number one food for that is actually soy. So tofu, soy milk, edamame, soybeans have been found to help prevent hormone driven cancer. So like for women, I think that that's one of the most important cancer fighting foods. Also high fiber, also will help to balance hormones in the body generally, help with our brain health that way. and help to increase bone mass and a wide variety of other things. So yeah, again, list can go on and on in terms of
Well,
supportive.
I love it. I love it because sometimes you hear the word diet and it's like, oh, I cannot eat so many other things, but the list can actually be longer of the things that will help you when you have the right information, because and we're not going to get into the subject of hormones and women, but that also so much the mental health, that just having that information of soy-based foods that can
Exactly.
help balance some hormones, it's great. What advice do you have for individuals who want to make a dietary change to support first a cancer diagnosis and then their mental health? And where should they start, and what resources are available to help them? I think you just said it, but just to make sure they have your website. I just want to highlight that you said something so important right now, which is prevention. You probably have the numbers of how many cancer diagnoses are, like one in how many people, but how to prevent and not get into that stage of I have a loved one that's diagnosed, or
Oh,
of
yeah.
making prevention.
Oh, amazing point, Lillian. Yeah, because we're talking about treating, but we don't want to even be, in that state of having to treat it. We want to be able to say, I'm never going to get it. And the reality is that 1 in 2 people in Canada, nearly 1 in 2 in Canada are getting cancer right now, being diagnosed with cancer, and 1 in 3, I believe, in the States. The risk of a female in North America of being diagnosed with cancer is about 38% in your lifetime. So again, almost 1 in 2. And for a male, I believe it's 37%. So we have to look at prevention. I mean, it's like we were all terrified of COVID, right? The risk of COVID was a lot lower than that. Not to downplay COVID, but cancer is 38% on average. That's your lifetime risk. And so focus on what the studies show, and the studies show that a diet that's rich in plant foods has led to a reduced reduction of many forms of cancer. So people who eat more plants have lower risks of cancer. And that's what the studies have shown since the 1960s. We've known this. I don't know why it's not more widespread information, but this is what we've known in terms of diet. And of course, stress reduction is really important. Physical activity is really important. Avoiding, smoking and drinking alcohol is really important. So just those 5 things right there are going to help you prevent cancer, those lifestyle factors. And like I said, what to focus on? Focus on getting a powerful, nutrient-dense meal into your diet every single day, whether that's a salad with 8 cups of leafy greens and walnuts and berries and onion and garlic and other vegetables on top, or a smoothie with 10 cups of leafy greens and some banana and seeds and nuts, etc., and berries. Focus on that, as long as you're getting those nutrients in, because most people are sadly not consuming enough antioxidant rich plant foods, and that's just the reality in North America, sadly, right?
Very sad, because everything is, I mean, for the most part, is preventable, right? And this
That's
brings me
right.
to my last question. How can a nutritionist work alongside mental health professionals? I think not just mental health, but all the other disciplines, to provide a comprehensive care for individuals struggling, in this case, with mental health. Because you have done a great point of prevention, of eating, but one of my goals is that we all work together to make sure that I feel sometimes the system is separated, like, right, someone comes and they want counseling services because they're feeling depressed and they're feeling anxious, and we can work a lot on different interventions, cognitive behavior therapy, and how are we going to challenge those cognitions. But I feel there is a missing link of making sure that we're all working together. Well, you're coming to me because of this, but how are you eating? What are you eating? And sometimes it's hard for them to even find information of the relationship between one and the other. So number one, thank you again for being here and for having all of this information for us because it's so connected. Nutrition is everything you eat. It becomes who you are, and there is not enough emphasis on, I think every doctor will say, you need to eat correctly, drink, and sleep, right?
Right.
But it's kind of like, those are the three tips, but what do you do next? Like, where do I get that information? And you did a great job explaining how all is connected, but just a question, how do you think we can work more alongside between therapists and
Oh,
nutritionists?
yeah, I know, isn't it? It's such a, I know, I wish it was easier. In my practice, what I do is I just refer out to, I have a breathwork specialist. I have someone that does, energy healing, acupuncture, physiotherapy, therapy, counseling. Like you just said, it's so important. So I just refer out to different practitioners. Um, it's important for the person going through the disease because our medical system hasn't caught up to the fact that it should be integrative. Like that's the reality. The majority of our medical practitioners, when you're going through cancer, for example, or mental health, disorders, what we can expect is not to be presented with an integrative model because we haven't caught up to that yet in North America. So what we have to do is we have to take charge of our own health and be our own care manager and be your own advocate, right? So like set up your own team, set up your own healthcare team. So you have your counselor. If your counselor doesn't recommend a nutritionist or a dietitian or, a breathwork therapist, then reach out and do your research and get that team together. Or if you're in a state of, like if you're going through cancer and you're really, really sick and you're not feeling well, of course, you can actually assign a family member or a friend and say, hey, can you be my care manager? I need an integrative team of practitioners. And I really want to hit physical health, mental health, spiritual health, medical, of course, and any other aspect, nutrition, for example. Can you please help me set up a team? That's what I did when I was sick. That's what I, tell my clients to do. And yeah, in a perfect world, everybody would be working together, referring to each other. But unfortunately, that's not the case in every single system right now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I think you nail it to the point of you are responsible. Like it kind of, sometimes in mental health, we talk about 100% responsibility, not of your diagnosis, but understanding what you have control over and versus what you have no control over.
Exactly.
And some of the things that we do have control over is the actions that I'm going to do, whether it's that I don't have the motivation, because that's one of the symptoms with depression, lack of motivation, but assigning a family member or a loved one or a friend or a coworker that is able, like building a community that will help you get through it. So
Exactly.
thank
Like
you
you did
so
for
much.
you're welcome. And then like you did for your friend, right? You took charge because their family was going through something so serious and you were the care manager and you took charge and you reached out to myself and whoever else. And so you're the perfect example of somebody who did that, right? And so
Yeah.
if we're not in it already, we can definitely delegate the tasks and
Yes, this understanding that we have to be okay with sometimes asking for help, but
yeah.
also knowing that we do have more control sometimes than when we think of. So
Yes.
maybe we don't have the motivation or the strength at that moment, especially sometimes after chemo, but knowing that there's people that care and you can build the support to
Exactly.
get and get those needs met. So thank you so much, Hannah. I know you know how much I appreciate you for being
I
here.
appreciate you
All the
too.
work that you've done, you've literally changed many lives, at
Oh,
least
thank
with
you so
us.
much, Leah. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here and to share this information. And yeah, just remember that nutrition is vital. It's vital. Fuel yourselves, always
Yes.
fuel yourselves for everything.
Okay.